Welcome. Thank you all for joining us this evening. It's lovely to see you. I hope you're tucked up safe and warm out of the snow. First of all, I'd like to say a very big welcome to Dr. John Shaver, our MC for this evening, and to say thank you to all you speakers. We have some speakers with us here in the room and they will be jumping into this chair to speak, and we have some of you on Zoom. We are recording this session this evening just so that people who are unable to attend tonight can access it later. So just to let you know that. And also, if you could submit any questions via the chat function, that would be great, and I will read them out. And the other people that we have in the room this evening are Petra Hess, who's a career advisor at the Career Development Centre, and Jackie Dean, who is the manager of the Career Development Centre. So thank you to both of you for joining us. All right, I will leave you to it, John. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Lucy. We have a fantastic group of 7 speakers today. One of the great things about humanities degrees is with the emerging markets of today, we never know where jobs and professions are going to emerge. But humanities degrees sort of allow you the flexibility to find different kinds of jobs, and we have evidence of that with the speakers today. So rather than hear me talk, which would be uninteresting, we'd rather have the guest speakers. And I'll just remind everyone of what Lucy said. So if you have any questions, just enter them through the chat function and we'll be able to ask them. Each speaker will be given about 5 minutes, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions. And then at the very end, if you have more general questions to the entire panel, feel free to ask those. So our first speaker is Jared Griffiths. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a Bachelor of Laws in 2017. He first worked as a law clerk here in Dunedin, and now he is the head of the mayor's office at the Hutt City Council. Jared, I'll turn it over to you.
Kia ora, thank you for the introduction, and it's a real pleasure to be here and joining as we are these days virtually. And I know these events would have occurred, I think, in the past in person, but still good obviously that they can go ahead using Zoom. So I'll just try and share the presentation, the short presentation that I've done, and try go through this sort of as quickly as we can, and then yeah, happy to answer any questions. So as the introduction, so I graduated in 2017 with a Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Laws, and I just want to echo what was said just then in terms of the values of humanities degrees. I think, so I did both the Bachelor of Laws and Bachelor of Arts. I think definitely teach you a whole heap of skills that I've applied in my jobs that I've had since leaving university: critical thinking, research, the ability to communicate, work with others, and have all been really extremely valuable. So I think back sort of almost every day of my time at Otago and what those skills taught me, and the fantastic staff and the faculty, and in terms of what that's allowed me to achieve. So really just want to acknowledge that. So really just want to talk about what I've sort of done leading up to where I am now. So I graduated in 2017. I did for a short stint, I think for a period of about 6 months, as a graduate solicitor, and it became quite, and I'll talk about this sort of at the end in some general reflections, but certainly wasn't where my passion was. So when the election result, the election happened in 2017, and Labour and Jacinda Ardern were elected, I took up a role in Wellington as a political advisor to the Minister of Health. And after doing that for about a year, moved to the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment as a Principal Communications Advisor, and now as the head of the Mayor's Office at the Hutt City Council. And I'll talk more about sort of what I do, and I sort of put that at the bottom, but really what my roles have been since graduating are around providing high quality political advice, supporting politicians to make good decisions, helping them to achieve their agendas, and specialist public relations advice. So I should have almost done a bit of a disclaimer at the start. This is going to be an extremely political heavy presentation, just given the nature of sort of what I've done, but may be of interest, I think, to some of you. In the Beehive, so I advise the Minister of Health and involved in a number of pieces of work that you probably would have seen in the media, so including the government's major review of mental health services in New Zealand, a major health sector review, and because the Minister I worked with was also the Associate Minister of Health, Associate Minister of Finance, supported the government's budget process in terms of putting together the budget that's done every year. As principal engagement advisor, that was really on economic development policy, so working directly with the media, doing some crisis communications and a lot of public relations advice. And my current role as the head of the Mayor's Office, more commonly known as the Chief of Staff role, is a combination of both, so both policy and communications, and really about supporting the Mayor to achieve his vision for the city and helping him achieve his policy priorities. So happy to answer any questions around those roles at the end, but thought it would be helpful to at least explain what I do. Thought I'd include a picture there that was when I first started working in Wellington. So this is the swearing in of the new government in late October in 2017. So real privilege to be there and to be working at that time for the incoming government on the steps of Parliament. And this year is around my current role, so I work for New Zealand's youngest ever elected mayor, which is also exciting for a different reason, but just to provide some context. In terms of how I took on those roles and got there, really the three, and reflecting on this, is a few things that I had thought. The first is that I really had an idea of what I wanted to do in high school. So I certainly was interested in the political space, in communications there. So in my first job, I was elected the union delegate in the workplace, and by my colleagues, was involved in the union movement and volunteered on my first political campaign in the last year of high school. And so that by that stage, and when I got to university in 2012, I continued doing that work. So I was offered a role with David Clark, who's your local member of Parliament down in Dunedin, about halfway through my first year after doing some work in an NGO and a charity. And what started out as a small part-time role grew while I was at university, to the stage where I managed his election campaigns in 2014 and 2017. And I continued honing those skills while at university. So I ran those election campaigns, helped with election campaigns overseas, was involved in OUSA. So I was vice president in my second to last year of a university, but also supported a number of those elections. And was working the whole way through. So I think in terms of what set me up and enabled me to do what I do now, it was both the formal education at university through my arts and law degree, but also not passing up on other opportunities that came up and getting involved in the areas that interested me in terms of providing some of those skills to set you up in the workplace. And since I've had my current roles, the learning and the development doesn't stop there. It's continuing to hone those skills, building relationships, all that training and development that comes with being in a professional role as well. So the learning never stops. You're always learning new things and learning new skills. I think in terms of some reflections, in terms of my career journey so far, I think the first is just to acknowledge really fortuitous timing, and when I was graduating, and the alignment between working for a member of Parliament, the election result, and then being able to been fortunate enough to be offered a job in Wellington. There is an element of timing there where I was extremely lucky. I hadn't anticipated the election result in 2017, and I don't think a number of people did. So I had intended a circuitous role in Australia working for the union movement over there, but it was made a decision to stay in Wellington and work. So that's just a timing thing, which was extremely lucky. I think the second reflection was we were asking in the presentations what some of the challenges we've faced since leaving university. I think for me, And I think for a lot of young people, imposter syndrome is one that comes up a lot when you're in sort of senior positions or at a young age, particularly in the public service, which is highly tenure-based. You are questioning your experience and the value and being there. So that's sort of one thing that, and certainly talking to a number of friends of mine and colleagues, that's something that comes up a lot. But really that's just about demonstrating success, that you can do the role, producing high quality work, and I think what getting through that's really just about time and experience. Sort of haven't said this at the start, but I am severely deaf, so I'm completely deaf in my left ear and severely deaf in my right ear. So that's been a constant challenge both at university, although I have to give a plug to Disability Support Services at Otago, who do a fantastic job for disabled students. But in the workplace as well, that's something that has always been a bit of a challenge that I have to overcome. But I mean, sort of get through that. And the last reflection that I sort of had was around most of my roles have been highly political, but they've also been values aligned. And that's something that I've sort of been fortunate in knowing what I want to do, the sort of people I want to work for, the sort of work I want to do, and what my values are and the values of those I want to work for. And so when you have a good values alignment between the work you're doing and what your values are yourself, it makes it a lot easier to work hard, to sort of aim for that next step, to really throw yourself into it. And so, I mean, couldn't recommend more, if you can, getting a role or looking at roles where you have a strong values alignment. So I've tried to get through that as quickly as I can, but I'm really keen to answer any questions if anyone has them.
I'd really like to know what an average day looks like in your life at the moment in the Mayor's office.
Yeah, so I manage a team of 3 people and got a great team in the office here. An average day, it's never the same. That's the first thing I'd say. It's always a bit different. Tends to be quite long hours, and it just depends on sort of what the mayor's doing on a given day. So today, for example, there was a council meeting, and recently there've been quite some big decisions that have been coming before council. So in terms of some of the changes that have been made locally here. It's accompanying the mayor to meetings, providing policy advice, conducting research, working with his communications advisor in our office in terms of his public engagement program, fielding requests from the public, supporting other staff within council. So often within city council environments, there is a lot of staff that are often seeking direction or the mayor's feedback. So in many situations, that will be me giving that initial view on behalf of the mayor and engaging on staff, just to make sure that the work that's been progressed is sort of aligned with what his priorities are. So it's a lot of relationship management, providing advice directly to the mayor and providing guidance to the team in our office to make sure that the work that we're doing is supporting the mayor achieve his agenda.
Thank you, Jared, and thank you for your, or I'd like to congratulate you on your success only 3 years out of your degrees. It's really amazing, everything that you've done. I was wondering, like 3 years out of my bachelor's degree, I had failed a lot of times to get jobs that I wanted. And I wonder if you mentioned that your career trajectory has been quite fortuitous, but I wonder if you also had any struggles along the way in terms of sort of finding the direct path that you wanted, or maybe not getting the job that you wanted right away and having to go back later, or any struggles like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's two thoughts come to mind. The first is, I mean, I did say that I spent a sort of about 6 months as a law clerk at a Dunedin law firm, and that was sort of, I graduated at this top half of 2017, and then that was my initial graduate role, and loved the firm I worked with, loved the people, but I was really clear, and I knew when I was there it wasn't what I wanted to be doing long term, and I think that was certainly had to have a bit of a think about, well, this is where I am now and what I'm doing. How do I get to where I want to be? And that was, and I came to the decision at the end of that, and the sort of the end of my 6 months there, of leaving and contracting and doing some contracting work, so on communications and public relations, and I was quite upfront with my my employer about that in terms of what I wanted to be doing, and then that sort of led on, once I'd been on that communications track, then going into the roles that I wanted to do. So I think that was just really about, when you recognise that what you're doing isn't necessarily where you want to be, I think having a really honest conversation with yourself around, well, okay, where do I want to go, and what corrections do I need to make to get there.
Thank you, Jared. We'll move on to our next speaker now. Our next speaker is Waiana Mulligan. Waiana graduated in 2013 with a BA in History and a Bachelor of Laws honors. She first was an economic strategy policy advisor at MB, or the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, and now works as a banking and finance solicitor at Simpson Grierson.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Petra and the team at the Career Development Centre for arranging this event, albeit creatively via Zoom instead of in person, and inviting me to speak. This is I think the third or fourth time I've been able to come and speak to Otago students, albeit not in person this time, but I'm really grateful to be invited back. So yeah, my name is Waiana. I'm a lawyer at Simpson Grierson in our Auckland office. I specialise in transactional banking. So yeah, I graduated from the University of Otago with a BA majoring in history back in 2013 and my law degree in 2016. Without knowing what everyone who's watching is studying, I'm sure there's probably a good portion of you wondering what useful information a practicing lawyer can impart on people that probably aren't studying law. I'm hopeful that there'll be something in the next few minutes for each of you which will resonate with you, or at least an amusing anecdote somewhere along the way. But apologies if this isn't hugely relevant. What I would say to start with is that my current role is far from, my pathway to the current role that I'm in has been far from traditional, and at times my CV has been a great source of what I realise now to be unnecessary anxiety. During the last year of my history degree, I took up an editing role at an agri-science consulting firm in Dunedin, which evolved into undertaking research on export strategy for premium beef and sheep products into emerging markets. I'd done a couple of 100-level science papers and I can identify farm animals, but otherwise I'm pretty much a city girl with very little and at that time with very little understanding of the significance of our trade relationships and our agricultural sector to our economy. I left that job when I went back to law school, and in the holidays between the summer of 2014 and through to about mid-2015, I worked at the office of the Clerk of the House of Representatives, researching and editing the 4th edition of Parliamentary Practice in New Zealand. Having grown up in Wellington, I had always been interested in our political processes, so to work in that environment was a bit of a nerdy dream come true for me. The following summer, I joined KPMG to undertake a research project that would see me travelling around New Zealand, holding roundtable meetings with important players in the Māori business community, and to understand the shape and challenges of the post-treaty settlement Māori economy. This was quite significant to me as someone of Māori descent and who's grown up around my father doing quite a bit of treaty settlement work for our iwi, and so I was really excited and actually thought it sounded pretty glamorous, Big Four firm. Yeah, got to travel around. Well, in the end, it was horrific, and it really solidified my skepticism towards the working culture of big professional services firm. If I didn't want to be a consultant or lawyer already, I definitely didn't then heading into my last year of my law degree. So instead of applying for graduate jobs in big law firms, I decided I wanted to work in policy. I took a role at MB in the strategic policy team where I was well and truly out of my comfort zone. I'd taken economics in year 10, but mostly sat at the back of the class gossiping with my friends. It turns out there is more to economics than supply and demand and caveat emptor. It was only when I moved to NZX into a legal role there in-house and now into private practice that I kind of feel like I'm using one of my degrees. In saying that, I've worked in the finance sector for close to 3 years now with no formal finance training, and in my opinion, I didn't need it. I believe in large part that is because a humanities qualification provides you with a broader skill set that can be applied to various technical fields. For me, it has helped me analyze the various subject matters I've worked around to understand how I can best communicate information and deliver outcomes. I think it's important to remember as you move into the workforce that your skills are transferable and capable of application in a diverse range of fields. When I look back at my career to date, I would not change any of the jobs I have done because they have all made me understand a bit more about what I want to do and achieve. The only thing I would change is the pressure I've put on myself to make good decisions and the anxiety that resulted. When I was in my final year of uni, I was constantly stressed about what I was going to do, and I can't imagine what additional pressures most of you are facing right now because of COVID. What I did learn though is that you can't predict or control the future, and tunnel vision doesn't necessarily lead you to meeting your goals, but it can shut you off from amazing opportunities. I've also learned not to take rejection personally. We all face it, and while it's disappointing, it just means you can be open to a new, possibly better opportunity. A fun example I like to think of is when I was looking to move to Auckland, I was asked by another firm to interview for a role that I hadn't applied for, but they had my CV on record. I did, and by the end of the interview, I'd convinced myself that it would be worth taking that job to move to Auckland, even if the subject matter didn't really interest me. Well, I didn't get it, and less than a month later, I accepted my current job. But funnily enough, my boyfriend's in that team, and we just did that second lockdown in Auckland together, and let's just say I've never been happier. I didn't get that role. What? I just get to witness it through him now, and yeah, that's enough. But yeah, over the last few years, I have realized that there are 4 things which shape how much engagement I have in my work. People are important. You spend a lot of time around them, but it shouldn't be determinative because at the end of the day, people change what they're doing. So a team's never going to stay the same, but I do think it's pretty critical. Subject matter. I need to be interested in what I'm doing to be engaged in it. That MB team that I was working with was amazing, but I just couldn't engage with that subject matter. And for me, working in financial law just seems to tick a few more boxes, and I continually feel engaged. Development, having a sense that there is room for progression has been quite important. For me, that may look like different things to different people, but I definitely felt at NZX that I wasn't going to get the scale or kind of scope of development that I was looking for. I wanted to broaden my skill set while still actually being able to be junior and learn that way. So moving into the firm has really helped me with that, and there's a bit more inbuilt progression here. And finally, a sense of being valued. That can take many shapes and forms. Some of that will be your financial remuneration, which I don't think is the be all and end all, particularly when you are learning so much, but it can also relate back to the people and whether or not you feel like the work that you're contributing is respected and you're being respected as well. What that all kind of boils down to for me is a sense that life is too short to be stuck in a role that doesn't suit your drive. And by using a method like that to assess what you're getting from a role, you make more reasoned and logical career steps and hopefully derive more enjoyment from it. I mentioned earlier that my CV gave me anxiety. Well, I mean, this is my third professional job in 4 years since I've left university. And I do believe there is still a culture that you should stick things out. And I agree with it to an extent. At the end of the day, I'm the person that carries the risk of my CV, not my employer. I'm the one that justifies my moves. But by using the above, I've been able to demonstrate a clear pathway for development in my career. And at the end of the day, I know that I'm responsible for it and its direction. No one else is going to push me along. But I've also had to remember that that direction doesn't necessarily need to be linear. I sometimes think about if I met myself 5 years ago and told myself that this is where I was going to end up, I would have laughed. I work for one of the biggest law firms in the country, and I won't sugarcoat it. It's tough. It's a high pressure environment, but most of the time I really enjoy it. And even though I am kind of constantly working on striking a good level of work-life balance. But yeah, I would say if you're not getting that balance right, life is once again too short to be miserable. I've had several friends recently quit jobs because they're burnt out. It's not because they can't cut it, but because the pressure we put on ourselves to thrive and exceed is immense, and not every workplace has the resources or the culture to support its staff. I'm optimistic though that things are improving, and particularly as the stigma around mental health is removed. I would say that last July I ended up needing 2 weeks off because I was hospitalised with a kidney infection. It was pretty tough physically, but mentally I'd only been in Auckland and in this job for 2.5 months, and I was really afraid that I was letting myself and my team down. But I was very fortunate to have good colleagues that reminded me that nothing is more important than my health and to look after that first. I think when you move into the workplace, if you can start from the very beginning by practicing kindness towards yourself, maintaining healthy boundaries with your work and building a really good support network, you're going to really mitigate the risks of that happening. So that's my doom and gloom for a minute. But so if the question that is put to us here is, where can I take my humanities degree? The answer, I think, is anywhere really. If you keep your eye out for opportunities, whether it's to get your foot in the door or a stepping stone or a complete pivot, and look for things that interest you but also offer you room to challenge yourself and grow, I think you'll see that you can apply yourself in any way. No one expects you to be an expert in your first job, so just enjoy the opportunity to be brand new, be a junior, learn from your experienced colleagues, and enjoy the moment of realization when you realize, oh my God, I actually know what I'm doing now. I've probably rambled over my time and into questions, but happy to take any questions. I do have to leave relatively soon afterwards, but I've already let Petra know that people are welcome to email me. So if you have any direct things that you don't feel comfortable raising here, then I'm more than happy to answer them. And I think one just popped up in chat, so I'll just hand it back and then, yeah, let it go from there.
Thank you for your talk, and congratulations on all your success. It sounds like you've been doing fantastic things. I myself started out as a business major before switching to anthropology because I liked anthropology. But it interests me that you ended up doing finance and economics jobs without those training, which I think people majoring in those fields would be very resentful over. So well, I think it's great, but why? So can you maybe tell me why you didn't need to do the major in those things in order to be able to do them, and at least in the roles that you've done them? Sort of, is it that you're trained on the job, or is it that it doesn't require that high level of training, or?
Yeah, no. So the places I've worked at, I've been exceptionally fortunate to have received really good training on the job. With the MB role, I applied through the graduate program, and so they are assessing a whole range of candidates, and they're bringing diverse skill sets in. I would say ordinarily people would probably end up in that team if they had an economics background, but when I was looking at the teams that had availability to start with, that was the one that kind of interested me, so I really positioned myself for it. I'm a bit shamelessly brazen in the cold call email occasionally, because I thought it would be an interesting opportunity, and I was right, even though it wasn't something I wanted to pursue as a career long term. In terms of finance, I had done predominantly corporate papers in my law degree, and I knew that that was the area that I wanted to go into, general corporate. And so when this role came up at the stock exchange in-house, it was a bit of luck really that they looked at my qualifications and my exposure to the economics, as well as my technical legal training, and said, yeah, no, I think she can get it. And I think I was lucky to have commercial instincts in there. I mean, I always think that the real finance details that's a commercial thing, that's not for legal input. I don't like dealing with numbers. I'll type them into my loan documents, but I won't work out how we got there in the first place. But it's definitely interesting, and I mean, I'm continuously learning, and I feel very grateful for that. But I think it's just been my experience that you don't need to have a finance degree to be a finance lawyer. You don't need to have an economics. I mean, a lot of my team were economists, but in terms of providing economic policy advice, so long as you can critically reason and you can, demonstrate that you're learning and you're trying, I think you're open to so many more opportunities.
Okay, great, thank you very much. And so we'll move to our next speaker, and we have 3 speakers who are actually in the room with us here in a row. Our first one is Violetta Gilbert. She received her PhD in history here this year, very recently, and now she is an early career researcher and teaching fellow in the history department here at Otago.
Thank you very much. I'll just be sharing my screen, folks. Bear with me. Kia ora, lovely to meet you. Well, those I can see in the room anyway and on screen. And I'd also like to thank my hosts for having me, and previous speakers. It is really humbling to be following in the wake of folks who are so experienced and well established in their roles. Certainly different for me, but we have a few juniors coming even in my wake as well. So it's all terrific. I was expecting to do a sharp tone shift with my presentation, but I'm very glad to see that it's not going to be quite as sharp as I expected. Thank you, Wania, for bringing up the issue of mental health, because that's actually going to be one component of my talk, which I'm going to press a little further. So for this purpose, my presentation comes with a trigger warning, especially my 4th slide for brief mention of domestic violence and other intense issues of that nature. So muting microphone or video for any audience members who want to tap out, 2 or 3 minutes should do it towards the end of my talk. But nonetheless, for some background first, before we get into those slightly more interesting matters. Oh, there we go. So a bit of background about how I got here. As introduced, I'm a teaching fellow in the history program here at Otago. And for some context into how this kind of unfolded, if we look through this timeline of my studies, it all looks rather tidy. And one might perhaps be moved to think that there was a lot of very careful planning and a lot of clear-sighted decision-making behind how my study unfolded. There were no changes in program. There were no gaps in between my degrees. I went straight from one to the other through the academic pipeline in the space of about 9 years. obtained my qualification and actually began working before it was officially awarded. So what I'm going to emphasize today, I suppose, is a postgraduate skills, how we are able to kind of prepare ourselves for making this jump from a higher learning degree into a career in our field. And again, this is quite humanities heavy, but I hope that there'll be wider relevance in what I say as well. So with regard to planning, prepare to be disappointed. There was very little planning involved in my journey towards this point, and no, until the final year of my PhD, only then did I really have a clear sense of what my professional life might look like. Prior to that, all I knew was that I wanted to practice history in some capacity, and my ambitions were more modest. I thought I might be a collections assistant at the Hocken Library, or perhaps I might work for Te Papa, or go in sideways. The Careers Development Centre here are great at advising how transferable humanities skills are, and so I was quite certain and safe in the knowledge that I was going to enjoy my degree, complete it, and deal with whatever came next. Bringing me to my motivation, primarily it was that I really enjoyed studying history, and history as a subject. It added a whole lot of colour to my life, and I really enjoyed the creative elements of it and how sociable it could be. So these are the things that kept me ticking along over the course of my undergraduate and postgraduate study. Regarding the actual, the events of the degree, of course, there was that very large box to tick, which is the academic product that you produce at the end. In my case, it was a PhD thesis. The upper word limit was 100,000 words. I think I ended up hitting around 87,000. If anybody wants to know more about my doctoral project, they can read my bio on the speakers list, because I don't have time to go into it. But I want to talk also about what I did around the researching and writing of that major requirement. Once I committed to the idea of spending 3 years completing a PhD, I felt I needed to be ambitious in planning, and this is something I still feel very strongly. Humanities scholarship has a very long lifetime. It is seldom the case as in the sciences. We may say that scholarship gets refuted or is superseded very quickly. For an example, one of my senior colleagues right now is producing a peer-reviewed article inspired by a footnote included in his PhD thesis. And to my knowledge, it's been 10 or 15 years since he submitted that thesis. And for the whole time, he has been mining it for content to produce and to research on. So we want to not be too conservative and safe in picking a topic for our PhD, not treating it, master's or honours or whichever postgraduate degree you're going through. And the same could apply even for an undergraduate essay. Pick something challenging and something interesting, and think about building the foundations of an interesting research and teaching career, because the building really starts at the postgraduate level. I also recommend a bit of boldness and breadth, especially where opportunities are challenging or unfamiliar. Very relatable, the mentions of imposter syndrome previously. That, of course, very much the case among most folks who end up in this position. We feel rather underqualified, but in the humanities, and especially at a postgraduate and early career level, it is really about applied learning. Prepare well, do your absolute best, learn from your experience, and do better next time. It really is that straightforward. Lastly, I could say something about how we find these opportunities. And by the way, sorry, speaking of breadth, just to give you an example, I've been on the radio. I've also produced or participated in a dramatic performance for Toitu Otago Settlers Museum for Otago Heritage Week. I visited quite a lot of schools to talk about tertiary study and also the study of history more broadly. And these were never roles that I envisioned a historian in the making or existing would undertake and would do, but it is very broad. And so I encourage you to kind of experiment, challenge yourself, and get a feel for what is out there, rather than just focusing on getting the bare minimum done, aka the thesis or whatever it is. And lastly, finding out about these opportunities to gain new skills and to extend ourselves and to build an impressive and active CV. I'm slightly uncomfortable with the term networking. It has never really fit with my experience in Otago or in New Zealand. It is rather more low-key. It is just a matter of being there and making yourself and your research known to those around you, be it your peers, your senior colleagues, or your junior colleagues as you move through the ranks. Getting involved in projects, volunteering some time or some effort, all of these things play out really well because they establish you in a network of people. Although there is none of the high-paced champagne sipping, speed dating, corporate kind of, goings on that we picture networking to be, it's very worthwhile investing time and energy in being present and being collegial and just sociable with other people. You may as well have a good time. Which leads me to my last point. And so the bad times, which Wania has already mentioned and done a great job of delving into. The challenges that I faced during the completion of my degree had very little to do with my studies or my research or my professional development at all. And they were actually so far removed that that in itself was the problem. My struggles with mental health and living in a violent relationship for a series of years, these things felt so non-academic to me that I felt that they had no place in an academic life or in an academic career. And I put off dealing with these things for a very long time because of it, and actually so long that I had to leave my home in a great hurry and spend about a month without a fixed address, aka not doing so well. And this being said, a bit of a crisis moment, but there are many others which I've generically termed non-academic pressures of an earth-shattering nature. Things like family violence, bereavements, diagnoses, health issues, struggles with addiction or with poverty, insecurity of whatever nature it might be. The non-academic nature of my struggles made me feel rather alone and ashamed to be going through them because frankly, there was no way of kind of integrating it into academic experience and the challenges that one might face in studying or becoming a professional. So, I mean, that's my first duty was to kind of bring that out into the open and say, yes, you can meet with such a crisis of that level 2 months before your PhD thesis is due, obtain an extension and submit it 2 months later and get a job, no less. This is a very ideal outcome, but I suppose the point I'm trying to advance is that obstacles of whatever scale and whatever nature that you encounter in your studies and in your professional life, they are surmountable. And they are more so when you get help early and don't put things off. In terms of support within and beyond the uni, there is just so much, which I waited until I was on the street to access. It does not have to wait for you folks, and that is one thing I would really recommend, not to put these things off and ensure that there is a healthy balance, as Wania said. Women's Refuge, Otago Uni Student Support, and numerous others. You can get referrals and get help. So that would be my closing remark, folks, is that as you embark on your academic journeys, your professional journeys, what have you, take good care of yourself because the self is a tool of inquiry. And that is it from me. Any questions?
It's an amazing story, and it's amazing how much success you've achieved so quickly. To have a job before you finish your PhD is an absolute rarity in academia these days. I was wondering, sort of, as you did your studies pretty quickly, all in history, I was wondering if you ever had a sort of crisis of faith, I guess, in that you thought maybe you weren't in the right field. Maybe you should, if you wanted to start over, you would have gone somewhere else, or were you pretty much knew what you wanted to do straight through?
I was fairly certain, but I think that's probably because I got my crisis of faith out of the way in high school. I was being encouraged, even in that stage, to make sure I could branch out, don't put all your eggs in one basket, which I didn't even do in the proverbial sense. I was humanities focused. I was getting that encouragement to do something mathematical, do something scientific, keep your options open. There's no money in the humanities. That was the main thing. So I'd kind of accepted the idea that I may end up as a starving artist, but I'm going to have a great time becoming one. And I knew, again, that humanities skills were useful in a wider field. And so, you know, even if I could not end up as a historian per se, and again, that was never really something I envisioned for myself, that something would happen.
What about your thesis topic though? So from your sort of when you started your PhD all the way through, it's the same?
Yes, which I don't like changing my mind at all. Others have. I saw my peers, some of them make quite radical changes, some of them, you know, multiple months into their degrees. And that was definitely a challenge in itself. That being said, the title stayed more or less the same, but there were a lot of changes that happened internally in terms of the thrust of my research, how I framed my topic, and what I brought into it. So the changes all happened under the surface, out of the public eye.
Thank you very much for sharing your journey with us. Our next speaker is also in the room, Ryan Tippett. Ryan completed his BA in Communication Studies in 2012, and then the next year finished with first class honors. He then started a master's, and now he's a PhD student. I think what's interesting is he also has an interesting job while doing his PhD.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Thank you for having me here. Imposter syndrome has been mentioned a couple of times. I think just following those three great speakers has given me a little bit of imposter syndrome. I have a slightly more modest kind of presentation here, but hopefully it's some kind of instructive. So to start off about my job, what I'm doing at the moment, currently the Media Communications Lead is the name of the role at the Otago Regional Council, which is based here in Dunedin. It's the regional government body for Otago, as the name suggests. So I'm responsible mainly for responding to inquiries from journalists. That's the top priority. Promotional kind of media for the regional council, and a whole range of other things around the edge of that. The main skills that my job requires, which I have can owe to my humanities degree, are writing and editing skills. Relationship management is something I didn't really expect to have to do in my professional life, but it's incredibly important. That's both with internal and external people, lots of staff, counsellors as well, and then externally journalists and other media figures. Good judgment and understanding of media and how the media works, ability to communicate complicated ideas and information really clearly. The Regional Council, we have a huge range of things that we're responsible for, from science to policy to buses, and it sometimes is a real challenge to communicate all those quite complicated ideas in a way that can be packaged up by the media. So in terms of my path here, I didn't really know what I was doing after high school, except that I was sort of interested in media. So I started doing media studies at uni. Got my BA, still not really sure what I wanted to do, so I went into honours. Still unsure, but told I should do masters, so I did masters. Still not really too sure, but my supervisor told me I should switch up to a PhD. So I'm doing a PhD, and it's about 99% done. I'm literally just doing the references at the moment, and I'm still not sure what I'm doing. But in the meantime, I have this job, which has been really good. And yeah, I've developed the written communication skills and the critical thinking. That's really the core of my job through all that study. So in terms of how I got the job, yeah, a few people have also mentioned fortuitous timing and luck, and that's certainly been the case for me. I don't know if that's a particularly useful message for anyone watching this, but it has been the case for me that I felt really lucky to get my job. I know being a job hunter is really challenging because my partner's in that position at the moment, and it's not a lot of fun, but it hasn't really ever been part of my life because I applied for this job. It was the first real professional job I applied for, and I got it, and I'm still there. So yeah, lots of luck. That's not a brag, that's just me saying how lucky I was. Going the extra mile in my application, I think was partially helpful. I had to do a task to sort of demonstrate that I could write, and I would sort of went a little bit further and tried to demarcate myself a little bit from the rest of the group of applicants. And then my boss quit not long after I started, about a month or two. And that was really challenging for me because I immediately had to take on way more responsibility than I was ready for. But it was also an opportunity to learn really quickly and also to demonstrate to other people in the organization that I could do the job and could be relied upon. And my lessons, another one that's been kind of a refrain, I think it's okay not to have everything sussed out just yet. Well, I hope it is, because I certainly don't. Yeah, like I said, again, just got lucky and found myself in this job, and I'm still working out what I'm doing and where I'm going next and how long I'll be here, but I'm feeling okay about it. The challenging environments are the ones you learn in quickest, has certainly been the case for me. Those few months where I was in really uncomfortable situations, a lot of the time having to go into people's offices and really ruin their day because I was answering a difficult media inquiry or bring counsellors to ask them challenging questions, that kind of stuff. It was really hard to do, and it's still quite hard to do, but you learn really fast being put in those situations. And lastly, again, something that's been said a lot, the skills we learn in humanities degrees, especially around communication and critical thinking, really are valuable in any role, really adaptable to different roles and workplaces. All the people that I work with across all sorts of different roles need those kinds of skills, and being able to demonstrate that you have them takes you a really long way. And I think that's all I've got, actually. So just a short one.
Thank you, Ryan. You'll help get us back on task.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? Okay, I'm interested. So when I was doing my PhD, it was very difficult to work. How do you manage working and doing your PhD at the same time? Are you part-time PhD or?
Yeah, part-time PhD. Mainly the way I've managed it is by not doing any PhD work. I should have been doing that. That's been the main thing. But more recently, it's been taking a few days off so I can have a long weekend and have a good run at it. Yeah, not a good answer again, but yeah, just not doing it or doing it in weekends.
Yeah.
It gets tiring though.
Yeah, I was just going back to the previous talk about sort of mental health issues. I could see how one could easily be burnt out.
Yeah, thankfully I've got a really good sort of support network for it, so it hasn't been too bad for me.
Okay, great, thank you very much, and congratulations on finishing. The references are the worst part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have Emma Powell. Right? Nope, oh, sorry. Ali Hayam, I knew you were in the room. Sorry, I didn't flip over the page. So Ali is currently a postgraduate student doing a Master's of Teaching and Learning. She graduated in 2019 with a BA in Geography. And I think interestingly, and particularly for the students who are moving into their third year, Ali did a Humanities 301 paper, which is an internship paper at Urakanui.
Oh, what have I done? Sorry, I'm trying to set up my slides. What have I got going on here? Yes, please. Thank you. Sorry.
And I believe, I'm going to speak for you, but I can hopefully delay. I believe you, it was through your internship you became interested in the things that you're working on.
Yeah.
With your master's degree.
And it's just courses really stuff to provide you with.
Oh, technical difficulties.
Okay, yep, we've got an issue. Thank you, Jeff.
Hello, sorry.
An actual professional is here.
You're not a teacher unless you have problems with technology. That's what I've learned from my last two practicums, so.
We love it.
And then just get into, yeah, that one there.
Oh, it was on the internet.
There you go. Oh, good.
Cool, thank you so much.
That's okay.
Hi everyone, kia ora. So my name is Ellie, as mentioned, thank you for filling in there. I totally have imposter syndrome right now because I was in your guys' shoes last year. I just finished my degree last year and I have not had any professional career as of yet. We're just getting there now. So yeah, my name's Ellie. I finished my degree last year. I did a Bachelor of Arts in Geography, Human Geography, and I did a minor in English as well. And this year I'm doing a Master of Teaching and Learning in Secondary Education, which is a lovely course offered by the College of Education, allowing you to train to become a teacher. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. But the reason I'm here, as mentioned, was I did in my third year of study last year a Humanities internship practicum, which I felt was a really fantastic opportunity, which is offered through the division and can be taken through any department to basically go out into the working world and work with an organisation to complete an internship. Basically what you get to do is you get to create a project and work on it with this organisation, and you get to count it towards your degree. So it's a really good opportunity. You get to work with the supervisor from the department that you choose, and they help you set up your project with a mentor from the organisation. You spend 13 weeks working for this organisation, so it's a really good work experience. And of course you get to pick kind of what you're interested in to complete that project. So it's a really good opportunity to engage with the working environment and sort of put those humanities skills that we've all been talking about into practice to actually complete your undergraduate degree. It's super flexible. It's actually a distance course, but because you've got your supervisor on campus, you get to meet with them regularly. And you get to meet other students from other humanities departments and sort of interact with them and find out about their projects and get like support from them. So I met a whole lot of different people from loads of different departments, which was really cool and interesting to see how different people went about this and the different skills that are developed through humanities. So my project was done at Otago Eco Sanctuary, and everyone here has spoken about how important it is to follow your passion, your drive. I really, really love human geography and English, but I have like these interests in sustainability. I did a lot of philosophy papers on like environmental philosophy and that kind of stuff as part of my degree. Lots of interest in the environment and culture. So I was really stoked that the English and Linguistics department were interested in offering me an internship at Otago. Basically, I went into the education office there and I got to be a teacher, literally, for 13 weeks. I worked on the education program. I worked with students ranging from ages 2 through to young adults in high school, and I even taught on an ecology field trip, which was super embarrassing. This imposter humanities student there with 200 level ecology students basically spinning a yarn, so that was super fun. But the real purpose of my project was to look into resource development for the education program there. So I got to develop a whole lot of resources for the volunteers that work on the program to help train them in education. And I also got to make some resources for the schools that come and the different groups that come to learn at Otago. And it was really cool to be able to give something back to the organisation, because some of those resources that I helped develop are still being used there, which is really awesome. So here are some little pickies from my time. I had a great time on my project. And I sort of took a bit of a sidestep from my resource development, and this is where I brought the geography side of my degree into the internship. Identified a bit of a gap for NCEA, so they offer a few educational trips for high school students to go to the Eco Sanctuary and complete internals. So we started working on developing a NCEA Level 1 Geography internal that would allow students to come and look at the human impacts on the environment. So I really got to engage both sides of my degree, which was super, super awesome. And I got to work with all these different students, which totally ignited my passion for teaching. And it was so beneficial. I literally cannot explain how beneficial it was when I was applying to the master's course that I'm doing now, to be able to say I've had this experience and I've worked with all different ages as part of my degree. Like, I mean, I've never had a professional job before, and so having this on my application to that course, because when you go into a master's, people from all different walks of life are applying. There are people that have had careers already and that are sort of changing and things. And yeah, as someone who has never had that opportunity yet, to be able to say that I got to practice those skills in an actual workplace, and to have someone who is an actual teacher sign me off and say, yeah, this person's ready to start a master's course in education. Here we go. It was amazing. So that's where I'm at now. I'm completing a master's in teaching and learning, and this is such a cool opportunity for humanities students to go and give something back to students and kind of ignite their passion in humanities in a high school setting, which is what I'm doing. But it's offered, this course is offered to people that are interested in primary, secondary or early childhood education. For me, it's secondary. I'm teaching in 3 different subject areas. So English is my minor, geography and social studies, and I'm doing a course in specialist English as well to help prepare students for scholarship level study at high school. Yeah, I've absolutely loved my year in the Masters. So it's a 1-year course. I've got to meet so many different people, and I've got to engage with other humanities-based teachers, and obviously loads of other different people, people that do science and all these other careers have all come into teaching as well, and had professional experiences in and out of Dunedin. But I think the one thing that the internship really did was, I mean, I got to practice creating resources, and when I got thrown into a classroom 10 weeks ago for the first time, I had to create all of my resources from scratch. And that experience that I'd had at Otago building resources already was firstly something to lean on, and secondly, a really good experience to kind of know what it's all about and how you can sort of get involved with it. So yeah, I got to engage with the NCA. It was just awesome. It's so applicable to everything. Just for your information, I guess, if you're interested in doing the HUMS Humanities Internship Practicum, you do need a B+ average in your previous year of study. But the biggest thing that you need is an interest and enthusiasm for your degree and for working with other people, which I think is, as everyone else has sort of said, really, really built on in humanities. Lots of like strong work ethic and motivation comes with that enthusiasm. So yeah, super helpful. I've put a few things on my slides about who you can speak to about these things. When I was offered the internship practicum, I didn't even know what it was. I was a second year student who was planning my final year of papers for my degree, and I got an email from Associate Professor Simone Marshall, who is in the English department, and she said, would you like to come in and talk to me about doing an honours project in English? And I thought, why not? I mean, this is a cool opportunity to get stuck into postgraduate stuff. And we ended up talking, and we realised that maybe the honours program in English wasn't for me. But she said, there's this awesome opportunity to do an internship, which I think you would really enjoy. So definitely contact her. She is the kind of contact for all internships across whatever department you're with or whatever, and she can definitely help set you up. Shameless plug, she's amazing. And yeah, have a chat to any lecturers in your department. I think that's one of the biggest things that I found doing humanities and working within the division of humanities, is that the class sizes are often small enough that you can actually go and chat with your lecturers. And that is just unbelievably beneficial to us as students. If I hadn't been taught by her, I never would have got to know her, and she never would have said, would you like to come and chat about this internship? So speak to your lecturers. They have so much passion and they have so much interest in you as students. I think that small class size is just, you know, it's so beneficial. So if anyone's interested in talking about the Masters as well, there's an email on there as well that you can check out, and you can email me as well with anything about the internship or the Master of Teaching. I'm a big advocate for both. So hopefully that's been helpful. I know what it's like to be in your shoes. It is daunting, but as long as you follow what you're interested in, you will end up exactly where you want to be. You just don't even know it yet. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. I will just point out that contacting Simone Marshall from English and Linguistics, she's also the Associate Dean Academic for the Humanities.
There we go.
So if you feel weird, if you are in, I don't know, politics, and you think, why would I contact an English lecturer? It's because she is the Associate Dean Academic, and she actually knows of a lot of internships that she can help you connect with. Most of the programs also have internship coordinators for that program.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit curious, how did you come to work at the internship that you had?
At Otago?
Yeah.
Simone suggested it to me. She's very well connected, and I was really lucky because I'm from Dunedin. So one of the well, my mentor, so one of the people that works at Otago on the education program, Tahu McKenzie, is actually a friend of mine. And so when Simone said, we'd like to set you up at Otago, it sounds like something you'd be interested in, I said, I actually know someone there that I could speak to. So building those connections is super important. But even if you don't know anyone, there are so many people that are interested in having an intern because you're doing work for them. You contribute a lot to their workplace, and yeah, they benefit just as much from having you there as you do from being there yourself. So it's kind of it's a mutually beneficial thing. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our next speaker, so we'll go back to some distant speakers. Our next speaker is Emma Powell, who had graduated with a Bachelor of Laws and a BA in History in 2018, and then went on to do a Master's of Peace and Conflict Studies. She's now working as a legal assistant at the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Historic Abuse, and is involved in the current state redress hearings.
Yeah, hi, thanks for the intro. I should probably share my screen, sorry. Sorry, team, I'm not the most, there we go. Hopefully we can all see that.
All good.
Cool, awesome. So my name's Emma. Ooh, too far. Emma, I've come out of the uni with a couple of degrees, as just mentioned, and a big adult job. So that's pretty cool. Unlike some of the others, I kind of just started. I only got my job in June, so I definitely understand what it's like to be floating around unemployed for a bit. I just finished my master's in February, so yeah. Also a little bit of imposter syndrome because everyone is really cool who spoke so fast, so it's really cool. So as said before, I'm currently a legal assistant at the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care. So I thought I'd just sort of walk through how I got into that, and then I can tell you a bit more about how I got into the job. So I started uni in 2014, and I started doing a BA majoring in history just because I liked it at school, and LLB just to see how it's going to go. I didn't put a whole lot of thought into it coming from school, but yeah, I really enjoyed them, but they weren't without their ups and downs at all. I almost didn't even make it into second year law. If any law kids out there listening, I got 76 and the cutoff was 76. So scraped in, basically. So when I finished my degrees in 2018, I was faced with having to go into the real world, into jobs that I didn't really feel prepared for. A lot of my friends were very prepared and happy to go into corporate law jobs, especially into big firms. And I just, I should probably change the slide, there we go. And I just didn't really want to do this. I didn't really want to be an academic. I didn't want to work in corporate law. I didn't really know what else was available to me. And I felt a lot of pressure to get a job, although I just didn't really feel ready to work a 9 to 5. I think the one thing I'd like to say here is it's really good to trust your instincts. My instincts about not going straight into a job that I wasn't passionate about were right. If I had maybe another life and more confidence in myself, maybe I would have gone to Europe and worked for 6 months in a bar, but that really wasn't what happened. I ended up doing a Master of Peace and Conflict Studies. So basically it was kind of a really weirdly hard gap year in 2019. But basically doing Peace and Conflict Studies really changed my life. I think it was really valuable to do a master's for a couple of reasons. One was I didn't feel like I always had to do a lot of big picture thinking. In law, it's kind of one form of conflict resolution, and it can be quite limiting just thinking about that as the sole form of conflict resolution. I began to think of law and my history degree and other things in terms of like wider social justice conflict resolution trends, which brought a lot more meaning to what I'd already done. It also gave me more time to consider what I wanted to do instead of just doing something I felt I should or felt pressured to do. Another cool thing about peace and conflict studies is that I could do a practicum placement and a report instead of just a straight dissertation research. I ended up going, I've only really, just a fun fact, I don't know if you've got this so far, but I'm a reasonably uncertain person a lot of the time. I've only really been certain about two things in life, and one was going to Otago for uni, and the other one was going to Parihaka for my placement. Parihaka is a Māori village in Taranaki, a wee community. It was historically important to New Zealand, very historically important to New Zealand. It was actually invaded by colonial forces in 1881. So, I mean, if you haven't heard of it, really, really interesting place. So it's famous for non-violent resistance, but up to today, the village is a really cool symbol for peace in the community. So I pretty much packed up all my life belongings in November last year and just drove to Taranaki. It was not easy by any stretch of the imagination. I did my research report. They told me what to do it on that would help the community. And I did it on the Mara, which is the community garden, not something I'm not a gardening pro, so it was more about the peace and conflict trends, peace journey, what the impact of the garden is on peace in the community. I found the cultural differences there really, really difficult to navigate sometimes, even though people were so kind. But yeah, it was tough. I spent about 5 weeks there, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. So then I finished up my master's. I started professionals to get admitted as a barrister, solicitor. Basically, through a lot of this year, I was sort of adrift in a global pandemic. I was unemployed, studying a little bit, but I could see it was running out. I had to find something. But what I had realized through doing a master's and doing those degrees was that I really wanted to use what I've done to do some good in the community. That was really important to me. So I applied for the Royal Commission into Abuse and Care in January, actually. And I'd just like to state for the record, I did not get an interview the first time, which I think is a good thing to note, because I applied again in April or May, somewhere around there, and got an interview that time, got the job, and the job started in June. The thing that attracted me to the Royal Commission was its overall goals. Hopefully it will lead to big structural change in the community about how people go into care and are treated in care and that kind of thing, which is, what I've kind of learned from those big trends in peace and conflict. So I work there as a legal assistant, soon to be a solicitor, which is exciting, which means I can also use my legal experience and legal knowledge to help achieve these bigger goals. I accepted the job because I thought I could really give something to it, and also that I could learn a lot from it at the same time. So I've currently been involved in the state redress hearings. There's quite a bit of media coverage on it at the moment, which is cool. They've gone on for nearly 2 weeks, and people have just been sharing their experiences of their time in care. Day to day, it can be quite grim. There are some really terrible stories of abuse when people should have been protected when they were children. Yeah, every day, it's a really interesting job though. Every day there's new things cropping up. We do a lot of, I'm kind of at the bottom of the chain of the legal team. We do a lot of evidence work and talking to survivors and witnesses and getting evidence and that kind of thing, getting ready for the hearings. But everyone who works with me is so talented, so motivated, so kind. I feel really, really lucky to be part of the commission. Sorry, just a couple more things. I just want to say, just don't be afraid to do something different. Peace and conflict is super random. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know what it was before I started. No one had heard of it. None of my friends knew what it was. but I wouldn't have got my current job without doing that degree in going to Parihaka. So nothing's ever wasted. Another thing is back yourself, trust your gut. If you don't want to get a job yet, and you're not sure, that's fine. I had this weird feeling that I would hate working a 9 to 5, and I think I would have if I did it a year earlier. But at the time, I actually thought it was because I was less smart and less onto it than all of my friends were. But really, I just needed, to do something else for a year, and that's fine. And now I'm doing it. It's cool. And make sure you deserve, that job, that promotion, whatever you're doing. Like, you're smart, all of you that are watching. And don't be afraid to try again as well. I think I've described it a couple of times. I mean, if I had maybe some pride, I wouldn't have applied for the commission again because they declined me once. But you got to keep going and apply again. And I think that's really important to know. And you also will get a job. It definitely feels like you'll never get a job and that they're unattainable things, but it happens and they're pretty cool once you're in them. And above all, have fun. It's a great life. And I've had a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks team. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Emma. That was fantastic, and congratulations on your job. And good luck with it as you're starting out. We are sort of a little bit behind on time, so I just kind of want to move to the final speaker, and then we can wrap things up. I have lots of questions I'd like to ask you, but I don't know how else to catch up on time, or else we're going to run really long. So I apologize. Your talk was engaging, and it was great. But I'm going to move to the last speaker now, Miriam Jenkins. Miriam got a BSc in chemistry at Canterbury before she saw the light and came to Otago to complete a Bachelor's of Arts in Religious Studies, my department, my program. She has had fantastic jobs around the world. She represented New Zealand at Athens in the 2004 Paralympic Games in swimming, and she now works for the International Paralympic Committee in Bonn, in Germany. So Miriam?
Kia ora koutou. Thank you so much for having me. And I really just arrived in my office because I didn't know about daylight savings. And we're not on it here yet. And also the subway wasn't running this morning, which was something I discovered as I arrived at the subway station. So I'm just going to, how do I, I'm sorry. I really apologise for my tardiness. Share screen. Why does it look different on my screen to yours?
Just me, because that's unfortunate. That's how we see it here.
Okay, so can everyone see that?
No, I think you might have turned your camera off.
Yeah, because I'm trying to share my screen. I thought that's what I was supposed to do.
No.
Oh.
Hi Miriam, it's Jeff here from the e-conferencing team. So to share your screen, just click the green share button down the bottom and you'll get
I just did.
Yeah, you'll get a pop-up window appear, and then hit the blue share in the right-hand corner of that. I did notice your connection was a wee bit slow, so it might be worthwhile keeping your video off anyway while you're sharing your screen.
So for goodness sake, I'm sorry. It's saying your browser is preventing access to your share screen, so that's cool.
Are you, maybe you're just connecting from a web browser, perhaps, Miriam?
Yeah, because I don't have Zoom installed on my work computer, because we don't use it yet.
Okay. If you can use Chrome, then you'd be able to do it, but perhaps on the fly now, that might be a wee bit tricky. Would you be able to present without your slides?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Good as gold. Then we might try your video back on again just to make it a bit more engaging. So if you'd click.
All right. Well, I do apologise for this. I'm really not this technologically retarded, I promise. I do know how to use a computer. Sorry. So kia ora koutou, my name's Miriam Jenkins, and I am currently the, I'm sorry, this is really embarrassing. I'm currently the competitions coordinator for World Para-Athletics at the International Paralympic Committee based in Bonn, as John just said. Yeah, he kind of explained it. Yeah, I was a competitive swimmer and I went to 2 World Championships and the 2004 Paralympic Games in Athens before I came to Otago in 2010. So I moved to Dunedin kind of on a whim and dabbled a bit, and then I saw a paper called Love and Heroism, Religion in South India in the course catalogue, and I had no previous background or knowledge in religious studies, but I just felt really drawn to it. And yeah, taking that paper really changed the course of my life. By the second lecture, I was completely hooked, and I enrolled in all the other religious studies papers offered in semester 2, and I announced to my family that I was going to become an academic, and I really just put everything I had into my study. I now see that Will Sweetman doesn't teach that paper anymore, which is a little bit sad because it's wonderful. So I graduated in May 2013 and I moved to the US and I worked at Nike. And originally I was based in Utah and then I got moved to Beaverton, Oregon to Nike World HQ.
Sorry to interrupt, Miriam. We actually have your slides here now and we might be able to bring them up and we could transition them through for you if you like.
Awesome, that's great, thank you.
I'll bring them up there now and we'll get everybody back up to speed in just a moment. I'm going to hand over to Petra, who's going to handle the slide changes. Can you see those there?
I can't see anything at the moment, I'm sorry. Oh, yep, okay. Oh, it's a different font. That's weird.
Cool.
Yeah, so I guess I'm on the next slide now. Oh, this doesn't look as nice as on my computer. Okay, yeah, that's maybe the next slide. Gosh, am I already there? Sorry. Yeah, here we are. So after I was working at Nike in the US, and then but I really just wanted to follow my dream of becoming an academic, and so I quit my job, and then I didn't end up doing that. I just quit, and then I came back to New Zealand, and then so in 2015 I was working at a gym in Auckland. And I got accepted really last minute onto the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, or JET. And so I moved to Hokkaido about 2 weeks after I got told that I was going. And I lived in a really small rural town in eastern Hokkaido. And I spent 3 very happy years there doing everything from I drove to 16 different schools in the area to work with the kids. I coached swimming, coached athletics, I looked after stray dogs, and I also sometimes got in trouble for getting too close to foxes because they're apparently, you're not supposed to touch them. But I learned really early on that teaching English overseas, it's so much less about the teaching, and it's more about collaborating with staff, building relationships with students, finding a way to keep them engaged and excited about learning. I certainly arrived with big goals of having students that were perfect English speakers, but that became so much less important than enjoying my time with them and letting them be themselves. And I taught some of them how to play cricket as well, which was cool. I came back from Japan in the middle of 2018, and I started working at the Department of Conservation, or DOC, in Aoraki Mount Cook National Park. I did all sorts of things from presentations to school age to university students about the national park, glaciation, conservation in general, and I did collaborations with Ngāi Tahu regarding applications for concessions on national park land. And I also wrote thousands of emails and had interactions with other DOC staff all over the country. I had been determined to stay in New Zealand for a long period of time, but then I had the opportunity to apply for my current role with IPC in June of last year, and I felt that it aligned with my interests and also suited my background as a para-athlete. The recruitment process was pretty arduous and stressful, but since accepting the job, I've had the opportunity to work at our Para-Athletics World Championships in Dubai last November, and I was going to be in charge of running our 8 Grand Prix competitions this year, They've all they've all been cancelled, and the Paralympics have been postponed. So I have been repurposed part-time into a different team, and I do proofreading of education documents. I worked on the 1 Year to Go commercial and on other projects promoting the Paralympic movement. It's been pretty weird, but I've been open to the change and learning to work with other teams, taking new things on board and just learning and growing. It sounds kind of cheesy, but that's actually what it's been. So I'm not really on my path of an academic career, but I think I've put excellent use to the skills I learnt from my BA. The number one listed requirement for my current job was a sports management degree, which I don't have. And so I have to tell you that don't be put off by not feeling qualified to do something. Your humanities degree is not just a piece of paper, and don't let anyone say that. It's evidence of your ability to work hard, manage your time, stay committed for a long period of time. Like, it's 3 to 4 years for most degrees, and a lot of people kind of underestimate how much hard work that really is. And just to keep learning and getting better. I think, yeah, getting a big brain is a really good thing to kind of do. Yeah, so that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Should I just wrap up? No? Okay. Thank you again for the Career Development Center for organizing this and inviting me. I was asked to very briefly sort of summarize all of the talks before we end. And I was sort of, everybody mentioned imposter syndrome, and I was sort of reflecting on why that would be, particularly given when Petra asked me to do this. I said, you could find somebody better to do this than me. So I had imposter syndrome even in doing this. And so I was sort of reflecting on what that is. And it's just, you haven't done it before, right? And so everybody, as they move from their degrees to getting jobs, you just haven't done it before. And so really what all of the speakers have given you is advice to get out of that idea of imposter syndrome. You can do it. I think Miriam saying you don't even need the degree that they have on the application. I think the second speaker, Wayana, suggested she just found a job she wanted and she just went for it and kept working hard to get it. And to go the extra mile, to just trust your instincts. If there's a job that you want, the humanities degree gives you the skills that you can make persuasive arguments, sell yourself to those employers, right? And also, I think another sort of pattern I saw across the speakers was, like people said luck, right? And sure that there's a lot of luck, but really when you have that persistence and you're just willing to try new things, and I think students who are attracted to the humanities, if you follow Miriam's career path and all of the countries that she's worked on, that's just a sort of creative, open mind, one who wants to explore all possibilities. And so sort of that, indirect path and being open allows you to take things you might not otherwise, that in retrospect might seem like luck. But I think it's sort of built into the design of the humanities and leads to the success no matter what career path you might choose. Those were my 2 things. That was my best at summarizing 7 very different talks. Although I do want to say that I feel very lucky to be a staff member here with all of these fantastic students doing fantastic, former students doing fantastic things. I just teach classes and then I don't see students very often again, and it's great to hear all of the great things that all of you are doing. And so thank you for your time. It means a lot to the current students and the staff and all of us here at Otago.
Yeah, thank you very much, John, for summarizing those amazing stories. And thank you to everybody, to all the presenters, Gerald, Wayana, Violetta, Ryan, Ali, Miriam, and Emma. And Miriam, so sorry for not thinking about daylight saving. I mean, this actually shows the readiness to really just jump on and do the thing, which is fabulous. And I have to say, what I found, what we have heard today as well, is two other things. It was actually great stories of resilience as well. And I think that's a strong message right now, where everybody might feel a little bit subdued just because of that COVID pandemic. And by all means, what I heard from all the stories is just trust yourself and find something that you really engage with, that you're really passionate about, and don't allow anybody else to try to lead you astray from what you really feel strongly about, and stick to this, and everything else will just fall into place. That might sound a little bit naive, but I do actually believe it is not, because it is about growing, it is about making decisions. Decisions might form into a plan. It's about finding connections with like-minded people who can actually take you further along the way because you care about the same things and they're happy to help. They might be your mentor, they might be a lecturer. Yeah, people you just need to let know what you really want to do, and this is where it can happen, yeah, in that space between wanting to do the next step and finding that opportunity and letting other people know who have the ability and the network to just get you into the next thing. I think that's really a strong message as well. Connect with your community and yeah, make the best of those inbuilt things as well, like the HUMS internship. I think this is such a great opportunity which is right there, and I'm not actually sure how many students utilize it, but I would recommend it strongly to every humanities student. What a fabulous opportunity that is. And yeah, most of all, have fun. I think that's a good one as well. So thank you so much, everybody. And we will make the recording available, obviously. There were a couple of questions which I think have been answered in the course of things. And thank you so much for this really inspiring event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. We close for now. I've had a